Let me start off by asking you this. So obviously we're going through a massive AI revolution at the moment. How do you feel like AI is going to integrate in Miami, but to benefit its citizens? As you know, AI can help people lose jobs, but also if you adapt, it can help you gain jobs. How does AI apply to the city of Miami moving forward?
Yeah, I think AI, generally speaking, is going to help people become more productive, and so that it'll help them do their job better. Right, number one. Will it displace some jobs? Absolutely. When Uber, I think of Uber when Uber came, or Lyft, you had the taxi cab industry suffered. Right, like this is something that replaces a sort of one industry. But what ended up happening, which was interesting and people don't really realize, is we had 2,500 taxi cabs at the time. When Uber came in, we had 14,000 Ubers immediately. So it actually increased jobs by about 700%. So, a lot of times there's unintended consequences of things. Another unintended consequence of rideshare was DUIs went down significantly, right? So, I think with AI, what's obvious is that it's going to revolutionize. It's already revolutionizing the world, and it's doing it, a lot of it on large language models, but it's going to start doing it in the way that it thinks and the way that it behaves.
It's interesting you talk about Uber. My Uber knowledge came from the show Super Pumped on Netflix.
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it. Oh, man. I know some of the characters, but I
Yeah,
haven't seen it.
absolutely amazing show. Obviously, Miami is the crypto capital of the world.
Thank you.
Whether it's a fact or an opinion, I strongly believe it.
Yeah.
What are some of the wins that you've experienced with implementing crypto in the city of Miami, and what are some of the setbacks
Yeah.
that you've actually experienced?
Well, I think the wins are, we were trying to take advantage of what I call a tsunami of opportunity when we saw the economy turning from an industrial economy to a highly digital economy. And I think we wanted to position ourselves. And I think we did that very well. One year, I remember we were up 2,000% in investments for crypto companies. I took my salary in Bitcoin. We put Satoshi's white paper on our website, and we did a variety of different things to sort of message that we were pro crypto, and it worked for us. Right, we built an economy based on that. Unfortunately, crypto as an industry, didn't work out. In terms of it had sort of a crash, if you will, and I think we saw what happened with Celsius, with FTX, etc. But I think what happens when those things happen is sort of the strong survive, if you will, and you start to see companies come out of that. And to use another example, I think a lot of like Netscape, or Napster, these file sharing,
The good old days.
right, the good old days, and those were not the companies that survived, but their technologies revolutionized the world. So I think decentralized finance, and a variety of different kinds of technologies that come from crypto are going to change the world.
What do you say to critics that talk about, and by the way, my dad is dramatically one of these critics. Talking to him about crypto is trying to explain rocket science to a 5-year-old, and I love him to death.
Right.
How do you respond to critics when it comes to the volatility of crypto? They don't feel like it's safe or it's able to
Yeah.
be hacked, scammed.
Yeah. So, I mean, what I would say to the critics is it's a pretty new technology, relatively speaking. When you think about disrupting something as massive as currency, right, or as value, right? It's a really revolutionary thing. Bitcoin itself, authorless, never been hacked, right? And I guess I don't know how you would measure volatility. There are ways to measure volatility in terms of things like Bitcoin, but Bitcoin's been a very stable store of value for a while, and it's been increasing in value over time. I mean, it's I don't even know what it's trading at today, but probably was trading at close to 100. The last time I checked, 104, something like that.
Right.
But it is so it is increased in value significantly. When I was getting paid in
Are
Bitcoin,
you still getting paid in Bitcoin?
no, not anymore.
Okay, good.
But when I was getting paid in Bitcoin, and it's just kind of a funny story why that didn't happen. But
Yeah.
when I was getting paid in Bitcoin, I was trading at 30,000.
Mm.
So I basically got 3x
Right.
my salary, just because I got it in Bitcoin.
You talk a lot about bringing talent and different businesses to Miami. When they come here, how do you make sure that it still benefits its citizens and not just the people that are coming to bring their businesses to Miami?
Yeah, that's a tension point that always exists,
Right.
right? Because we were ranked, I remember seeing once, number one in tech job migration,
Mm.
but for many, many years, people forget that we were kind of an intellectual talent exporter.
Right.
A lot of our kids in my contemporaries, right, went to these great schools, Stanford, Harvard, MIT, and they wouldn't come back, right? If they if they wanted to study, if they wanted to be in tech, they would go to Silicon Valley. If they wanted to be in biotech, they'd go to Boston. If they wanted to be in finance, they'd go to New York. And if they wanted to be in politics, they'd go to DC, right? So I think for the first time in the history of our city, we're bringing back a lot of those kids, right? I call them boomerangs.
Right.
They go and they come back. And so I think so a lot of the talent that we're bringing back is really our own talent. It's just has I can't tell you the number of parents that come up to me and said, because of the ecosystem you've helped create, my kids are now living here with me.
Right.
So I think that's sort of the success story there.
Would you ever consider running for president again? And if so, what would you do differently this time?
A lot. Look, I think running for any office, whether it's president, whether it's city council, whatever, it's based on a variety of things. Number one is circumstances. I was president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, coming out of the presidency of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. So I was president of all the mayors in the United States. I thought I was leading arguably the most successful city in America. And I thought that the strategy to win would be predicated on three factors that turned out to be true, except it wasn't me, right? The three factors were for a Republican to win, they need to do better in urban areas. They needed to do better with young voters, and they needed to do better with Hispanic.
That's overall or just to sit in Miami?
Overall, to run for president, to win for president of the United States. So, and President Trump did better in all three of those categories. And I remember Philadelphia, where he lost, because you're never going to win Philadelphia, you're a Republican, most likely. I mean, maybe not in my lifetime, but he ended up losing Philadelphia by 10 points less in this election than the last one, and he wins Pennsylvania. Right. So that's the strategy, right? Get more urban voters, connect with urban populations, which are cities, right? Which have a tendency to be blue. And you can win states that are close.
How do you feel like urban voters relate to you, especially in Miami?
I mean, I think I was born here. Yeah, and I'm the first mayor ever.
What city?
Born in Miami. I was born in Miami.
Particular area?
Yeah, I was born here in Mercy Hospital.
Oh, okay,
in Coconut Grove.
Oh, Coconut Grove.
Yeah. And we lived in Shenandoah. We lived in Little Havana, and then we lived in Coconut Grove for many years. So I was born and raised in this community. So I really feel a sense of connection to the community. And I also have a lot of friends because I grew up here, right? So I'm not like a guy that came from the outside and then became the mayor. And so I'm kind of like loosely connected to the city. I'm super intimately connected to the city.
When it comes to Trump policies, which policies do you agree with the most and which ones do you typically disagree with?
Well, in terms of agreement, I think, the fact that he's trying to cut spending is important. I think, the tariffs is one that has been a little more controversial, right? Because, it was shocking to the system when it happened, right?
A little bit.
But I think he was on the right path, right? Where the path was basically like, look, we should be treated fairly, and we're not being treated fairly. And so I think that's a good one. Obviously we want to be, I understand his desire to want to be tough on immigration. That's something he ran on. He was very, very clear as to where he stood. But there's a human component to that. That's tough too sometimes when you see people that are impacted by that. So I think that, God willing, after the big, beautiful bill is passed, he's going to focus on immigration reform, because I think that's something that would be a huge win for him, to get to a place where we can solve that problem once and for all.
Right. Everything I know about politics, I almost feel like they compare politics to almost being a gangster, right?
Okay.
It's very cutthroat in a sense, is what I mean.
It is very cutthroat. Yes.
What would you tell the upcoming generation that want to get into politics, these young kids, and they really want to focus on politics? And now you have social media over there with a blaster message out all over the place. What would you tell them what to do, how to navigate it with how cutthroat it is?
Well, the first thing I would say is, for democracy to succeed and to thrive, you need good people.
Right.
So I always encourage people, if they have the ability to give back, to participate in the process, to please do it, because we need good people. The democracy requires it, right? Because people are voting and they're making decisions, and the goodness of that person is what shines through the decision. It is cutthroat, and it is unfair oftentimes, and it is nasty. You know what I mean? And so I think, I always joke around that over time you develop these like emotional calluses. I have
emotional calluses.
I have calluses, but you develop emotional calluses, right? Where you try to separate good faith criticism, which we should always listen to.
Right.
Because if someone criticizes you and they're acting in good faith, you should always at least listen. Doesn't mean you always have to agree, but you should listen.
Right.
From bad faith,
a lot of the internet,
a lot of the internet, or people that are getting paid nowadays. When
The agitators.
Yeah, when my dad was growing up, there used to be this thing called Cuban radio,
Yeah.
and people would go on Cuban radio, and they would, the sort of charge was that, or the the sort of thought process was that a lot of these monitors were getting paid to do X, Y, or Z. And I think that's happening a lot nowadays. I think people build up a certain network, and then they're getting paid to exploit that network to try to shape public opinion into what they want it to be. And it's sad because a lot of people don't know that it's happening on the back end. So they give these people some credibility. Ultimately, eventually they usually tune them out. But because you can't just hear the same message over and over and over and over again and believe that it's genuine and authentic.
Being that it's so cutthroat, and obviously you look on social media, you see a lot of people attacking politicians, children, their families, their wives, aunts, uncles. How do you shield your kids from that kind of criticism?
My wife is really good at it. My kids are still young, 11 and 7. So they're kind of like, my wife is very, very strict on their use of devices.
You gotta be nowadays.
Nowadays. So,
yeah.
And we're lucky. I think, I'm on the way out in terms of like my tenure. It's been 16 years. And, my son is 11. So he's getting into that age where it becomes more of a conscientious thing. But hopefully, when that happens, I'm sort of phased out. So, so that he spared some of the stuff I went through when I was a kid.
What's one policy that you supported over the years that's drew backlash on you? Well, you still stand by it today.
Yeah. I got a great one for you, which is, our soccer stadium. We did.
That's in where's that? Sunrise, correct?
No. So we did it in Maurice Park, where it's now going to be a, it was a golf course, and we're converting it into a basically an entertainment complex with a soccer stadium, a paseo, and commercial property, a 50-acre, 60-acre park, and 20 acres of soccer field. So, it was very controversial because stadiums are very controversial.
Because of the congestion of the city.
Just generally, there's always debates about whether it's a giveaway or not. And, we did something very unusual, and I don't think we got enough credit for it, which is we did a deal with 0 subsidies. So that means we gave them nothing. And most cities, Tennessee for the Titans, Las Vegas for the Raiders, and Buffalo, and in New York for Buffalo, they're getting huge subsidy packages, right? We got 0 subsidy. And we could have said, okay, we're not going to give you any subsidy, and that's it, right? We'll give you the land for free or whatever. We didn't do that either. We made them pay fair market value rent for the land. We made them pay taxes, and they had to remediate the entire land at their cost. It was going to cost them $20 to $50 million. Plus, they gave us $5 million for a baywalk, et cetera. And there were some other things related to the employees on site. So it was a hugely beneficial deal. We took it to the voters. The voters passed it by 65%.
Wow.
So even having said all that, you think, oh my God, this is like, what a great deal. We still had our detractors and our people who, were hating on it and saying that we didn't charge enough on the rent, or we didn't, whatever. Everybody Monday morning quarterbacking the deal.
Have you ever in the history of politics ever had 100% of the people on the side of something you wanted to do? Or is there always going to be somebody that's like, there's always going to be at least 10%, 5% that, nope, don't mind.
Always.
So
I got elected by 85% when I first ran, like a little less than 85%. So that's the closest I've ever been to like perfection, if you will. That still means 15% of the people.
That's a B+ on a test, I think.
It's and it's actually an A+++.
Yeah.
Nobody gets 85%. Like
correct.
It's like a gradient on a curve, right? Like the curve is 85, is 100. So I always say like 85% is 100% because there is no such thing as 100%, right? I think there are people that are just going to oppose you because they're oppositional, right? They're contrarian.
Right.
So, I mean, that's a percentage of the population for
Correct.
sure.
I have a lot of contrarian friends. If somebody from out of state was coming to South Florida and they were trying to make a decision whether they wanted to move to Miami, Broward, or West Palm Beach, what would you say? What would you say to push them to move to Miami as opposed to the 2 other counties?
Well, I would say that Miami is where you go to live. Palm Beach is where you go to die. So,
I love it.
And Broward is somewhere in the middle. Broward,
it's like purgatory. Is that where Broward?
Exactly. Broward.
No, I love
somewhere between that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think Miami is one of the hottest cities in America, if not the world.
Right.
And I actually think that when people leave South Florida, generally, even all the way down to the Keys, and they're in other parts of the world, where they're in Sao Paulo or Paris or Tokyo or whatever, and they ask them, where are you from? They don't say, I'm from Broward. They don't say I'm from Palm Beach. They don't say I'm from, Monroe County or from the Keys. they say I'm from Miami.
Yeah, I just say Fort Lauderdale.
Everybody understands
Everybody.
what they mean, right? So I think the brand is so strong that it encompasses a massive area, way bigger than what the city actually is.
What's the one decision as mayor that you made that you don't think people will fully appreciate until 10 years down the line?
I think the one with the stadium, people will fully appreciate
Right.
it 10 years down
Because
the
they
line.
hate you until things work.
Of course. I think, and I also think this, I hope not, because I want to be wrong on this. You know, we've done some things that have never been done before, right? We're on the precipice right now having the lowest homicide rate in history. We have the lowest unemployment in America. We have the highest wage growth in America. We have the lowest tax rate ever, largest surplus ever,
Right.
best bond rating ever, lowest homeless rate in 11 years. So we have all of these incredible, what I call KPIs, you know, key performance indicators.
Right.
And my hope is that whoever comes over the next 8 years, really more 8 than 10, because 8 is like sort of the 10 years of being a public official, right? 2 terms of 4. My hope is that whoever gets it next is able to maintain or sustain that, right? I wouldn't want buyer's remorse, like in terms of like my city feeling like, oh my God, you know, I wish Mayor Suarez was back here at the cost of my city,
Right.
not being what it is, right? Like I would rather them say he did a good job and the next guy's done a good job too, and he's kept what Mayor Suarez did going.
Right.
That would be my preference.
If there's one person in the history of politics that you could sit down right now and have dinner with, who would you want to sit with, and what would you want to take away from that conversation?
In politics, probably either Winston Churchill
Mm,
or Abraham Lincoln,
that's a good one, Winston Churchill.
or you know, George Washington. I mean, Thomas Jefferson. You know, some of the forefathers of our country,
Right.
right? Benjamin Franklin. I mean, these are people that were inventors, that were you know, that had that lived incredible lives, and they were young, and they wrote this incredible Constitution. You know, in the case of Lincoln, you know, obviously the Civil War, and had to preside over the Civil War and the abolition of slavery. And in the case of Winston Churchill, leading, you know, the world and Great Britain through World War II.
Right.
You know, I think any one of those people, I'd love to be able to pick their brain and on leadership, on principles, on you know, philosophy.
Right.
Etc.
So this is a question I'm personally curious about, and it doesn't necessarily pertain to you in a sense, but as we know, when it rains in Miami, floods very easily. I mean, you could pour a bottle of water and it starts to flood in Brickell there. Obviously, I'm being dramatic.
Yeah.
How does one overhaul the drainage system here to get that fixed?
So it's really complicated and
Right.
difficult.
Yeah.
We have a porous subsoil, which is called limestone. So that's part of it. We actually have, there are moments when during the year where we actually have water that percolates from below and comes up.
Wow.
So it's not even, we call it dry day flooding. So it's dry. It's not even, you're not in the analogy you use of the cup. It's not even a cup. The
Right.
water's actually coming up. So that's a challenge. But you know, we have something called the Miami Forever Bond, which we've dedicated hundreds of millions of dollars, and we've tried to leverage it with state and federal funds to attack that problem. Water, you know, we have done a very good job with wind resistance, right? Like if you go to pretty much any single building, this is a historic building, you hit that, I'm pointing for the camera at the window over there.
Yeah.
You hit that window, it's an impact window.
Right.
So we're very prepared. Water is different because water, there's so much volume of water, right? So it's rain, it's storm surge,
Surrounded by
hurricane.
water, yeah.
Exactly. It's just a lot of volume.
Yeah.
So it's hard to manage intense amounts of volumes in a short period of time. And so that's what we strive to do. We can always do better.
Do you think in general that the United States of America is ready for a Latino president?
I think so.
I think we're ready.
I do.
Yeah.
I do. And I think, you know, you've got some great leaders like Marco Rubio right now, who's Secretary of State. I think he's serving our country incredibly well. So yeah, and he, you know, he's someone who's Hispanic and Cuban American, but was born in this country.
Right.
Obviously, is a byproduct of the American system and America, even though we have a Cuban background. And I think it would be great. I think, you know, 20% of America is Hispanic.
Correct.
So I do think, and I talked about that in the talking points when I was talking about me running for president. One of the things that I really felt was a big indicator of the ability to win was being able to attract Hispanics to the Republican side. And,
Right.
and Trump did that, you know, with a fair amount.
Unfortunately, in this world, everybody is stereotyped in some sort of way. How do you feel like outsiders stereotype Miami as a whole?
I think we sometimes get a bad rap for being a place where you don't work hard.
Yeah.
where everybody's just kind of having a good time and is like, out on the beach every day,
Right.
or, and I don't think that's true at all. I actually think Miamians are incredibly hardworking. I think they're hustlers, they're grinders. They're people who, oftentimes will work more than one job,
Oh, yeah.
to make things meet. And they, they enjoy doing things, right? They enjoy going out, they enjoy going to nice restaurants, they enjoy, we have the ability to enjoy these things too, because we have incredible weather and all that. So I think that makes, that for whatever reason, people turn that around into sort of a bad thing, but it's actually a very, very good thing. We have a thriving economy.
If Ron DeSantis ever run for president again, would you ever consider being his VP, or do you want to be president yourself?
Like I said before, I think running for anything, whether it's president
Right.
or councilman, it's a function of circumstances. It's a function of a lot of things you can't control, actually. So, when I ran, I thought the circumstances were right.
Right.
I don't know that the circumstances will ever align again for me.
Right.
Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I don't know.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's hard to say. One thing I can say about politics, having been around it since I was basically 2 years old, I'm like Benny, in front of a television screen. Is there's always opportunity.
Right.
If you want to serve, there will always be an opportunity to run, to serve, and and that's it.
Since I was younger, I've always had kind of a spot marred for homeless people. It just drives me. I don't feel like anybody on earth should be homeless. Now, my thought process about homelessness is, unless the government, in a sense, can monetize it, they're not going to fix it like they should. That's just my
Monetize in
personal
what sense?
figuring out a way to monetize it. I mean, if they're pumping hundreds of millions to fix the homeless problem and they're not making money back, how is it going to fix them, right? So I came up with something. Maybe it's been said before, but this is my theory on how it could work. You almost treat it like a college in a sense. So you set up your campuses, you set up your dorms. Obviously, you have to deal with drug issues, mental health, so on and so forth. But you operate it almost like a campus where you give them student loans in a sense.
Right.
They go out to the field, they work, they pay back the student loans with interest, and then it becomes a business. Just your personal opinion as a politician, do you feel like something like that could work?
So, I mean, we have, like I said before in some of the stats, we have the lowest level of homelessness in 11 years this year.
Right.
And we're doing that because we're doing things a little differently than everybody else.
Right.
The traditional model is to build housing, kind of like what you said, but not in the same way that you said it.
Right.
And to give them those wraparound services, mental health, drug addiction, et cetera.
Correct.
And do it either through shelter or through permanent housing. What we've done is I went out and I raised money privately to do something a little different. A, reunite people with their families, because oftentimes people that are homeless are disconnected from their families who may be in other parts and who want to take care of them. And B, renting out homes so you don't have to build things from scratch, which is a lot faster. And then helping them, kind of like what you said, helping them get self-sufficient.
Right.
In other words, helping them find jobs, still giving them those wraparound services, drug addiction, counseling, and of course, mental health, because they need that.
Right.
But helping them become productive so they can repay. In your case, your idea was the loan. In my case, it's the rent.
Right.
You know what I mean? And they become productive members of society.
Right. Do you think it will work to give them loans in order for them to pay back, where it benefits the government in a sense to make money? Because they don't want to invest in anything.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think it's what we're doing with the rent is really interesting.